All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode. If you're joining me over at Instagram, not at Instagram, why did I even say that? I know why, but I'll tell you why in a bit. If you're joining me over at YouTube, hi, you can see my super greasy hair today. It's just how I look today, and that's just what's going to be happening today. But if you're listening on every other platform and just audio, congratulations. You don't have to see what I look like today. Anyways, some self-deprecating humor to start. That's a solid choice. Anyways, I hope everybody out there is doing well. If you are new to this podcast, I don't usually start with self-deprecation. But sometimes we do. But this is a question and answer based podcast. If you have a question about OCD or anxiety treatment, or want to help somebody, or what to do when a family member is struggling, you can go over to fearcastpodcast.com and you can send me a question over there. You can also send me an audio question over at the Instagram, and this is why I bring up the Instagram. So first off, I am Fearcast Podcast over there. You can find me, you can follow me. I post things up there sometimes, but most importantly, you can send an audio question in to me there. It's probably the fastest and easiest way to get an audio question in, and audio questions go to the tippity top of the list, as what Payton did this week. So Payton messaged me this week and she sent an audio question in. So I'm going to be playing that shortly and then I'm going to be answering that question. But I will say, if you send an audio question in, you can, say whatever name you want. I will likely read it as the name. Sometimes I will change it if it's just ridiculous or just inappropriate, but I will read it. And and then you can have a little bit more anonymity that way. But if you want your question answered, send in your audio question. I think they're great. Y'all think they're great. And Payton thought it was great as well. So she sent in an audio question. So I'm going to be answering that just shortly. But I wanted to just jump off today. I had a conversation today with a client, and it was related to a bit of content, or related to like an idea concept that I often go back to in my own treatment with a lot of clients. And you've heard me talk about how I don't really think OCD is a thought-based problem. I think it's a feeling problem, right? That the reason I say that is because, through compulsions, a lot of times people will go through the compulsive cycle, go through the reinforcement cycle, or the reassurance cycle rather, and think about the problem, think about what it means to them, their relationship to it, whether or not they like it, don't want it, don't want it, whether or not it's true or false, and they'll read stuff on the internet, or they'll ask their friends, or they'll watch a TV show, or fill in the blank, right? 100,000 things that somebody can do as a compulsion to try to get some type of reassurance. Now, for the vast majority of people, they go through that cycle and they can tell you that the thought they're having is irrational, it's excessive, the compulsion they're doing may not be genuinely connected to it, or there might be, it might just say it has no connection to it. They might say that, they know their thought is wrong and they know that this other thought is more right, but what they go back to is this feeling is very convincing. I feel scared. I feel uncertain. I feel like I'm in danger. And it goes back to this idea again that though you've rationalized, you've logicked your way through the thought a bajillion times, that feeling is what's convincing you. To the point where, for someone who, let's say they have a taboo obsession, if I were to ask them about whether or not they have, they're going to get some illness and spread it to a friend because they touched something sticky on the subway, they might go, well, no, I don't really care about that. Or they might say it doesn't bother me, or they don't care, right? Now, if I were to say, do you want to spread an illness to your friend? They'd go, no, of course I don't, probably. But it's that they don't get that emotional response to it, right? Now, somebody else, we can talk about, let's say, violent obsessions or, POCD obsessions. And, for those of us who don't have that particular obsession, it might not do anything. We might say, I don't like it or love it, but it doesn't give us that emotional, visceral response. So we don't do anything about it other than we just go like, blech, that's weird. Or blech, I don't like that, right? Whereas if that's your obsession, it can feel overwhelming. There can feel this obligation to do something about it. There's this response to it. They may say that feeling elevates it to that point where it feels like they have to do something about it, or it feels convincing as if it relates to them in some sort of way. And, we've talked about ICBT approaches in here as well, where there's a lot of information that your brain uses and pulls together to kind of round up to something. But I maintain that if it weren't for that feeling, the feeling of anxiety or fear or uncertainty or uneasiness or whatever the unwanted feeling state is, if that's not there, you probably wouldn't do anything about it. So we talk about it in that sort of way. So what we were talking about today was this idea of how do we separate the obsessional content from just that feeling itself, right? So often, and this is a trick that OCD does, is it says the way out of the obsession is through resolution of the content of the fear. Right. So let's say it's sexual orientation OCD, right? So the belief is, I have to resolve and fully understand my sexuality in order to be better, to feel better, to get out of this loop. And once I finally figure it out, then I'll be okay. Relationship OCD. I need to figure out if this person is the love of my life, or if I truly love them, or if they truly love me, or if I am attracted to them, or if I'm not. And once I get to that answer, then I'll be out of this for certain. And you do the compulsive cycle, and that feeling starts to subside, and you go, okay, good, I feel good again. And then inevitably another what if thought comes up, and we go, oh, no, you're right. I should go think about this again. I should go down the rabbit hole again. So it serves to be that problem. Right. So, but again, if we're then looking at what is the theme behind this? What's the underlying narrative of this? And it's going to depend on each individual person. We talk about it as the core fear, and other people talk about it as in different ways. But it's what is the meaning of it? What's the fear? For sexual orientation OCD, it can be maybe I don't truly know myself. Maybe I don't truly understand, who or what or where or how I'm attracted. So, what if I don't understand me? Then what, right? If maybe I actually am gay, or maybe I actually am straight or bisexual, and then it's going to change my life. Well, then what happens in the future? Is it going to change again, right? So anyway, or, if I harm somebody, well, that's the opposite of who I am. I want to be a peaceful, loving, kind, compassionate, caring person, and having these violent thoughts makes me feel uncomfortable, like I'm going to be the opposite of who I believe I am. Right? So again, we've talked about that the core fear, the obsession, also reflects what we care about the most, right? So anyways, we're talking about this separation, right? So we're saying, all right, here's this obsessional content that it wants me to get sucked into. But what I'm advocating here is, reflecting back on what is the feeling that I need to sit with? What is that kind of vulnerable, scared, uncomfortable, uneasy, on the edge of danger feeling that I need to sit with, that has nothing to do with solving the content, that's not trying to answer the questions, but saying this thing over here is making me feel something that I don't really like, and I want to go do all those other things over there to try to solve the problem, whatever it is. Those are the compulsions. So as we all know, right, we have the obsession. It makes us feel uncomfortable, so we do the compulsion to try to make us feel better. It gives us relief, maybe briefly, but it reinforces this cycle, basically saying that my compulsion was necessary in order to deal with the obsession, or to deal with the obsession in the first place, right? So, if you see me keep checking, this is me checking my QuickTime player. I'm trying to record and make it so it works. Last time I recorded, the whole video was I think 25 gigabytes. It was enormous. It was bonkers. So I changed some settings. I'm going to see if it's work. I think it's going to work. I'm going to stop checking it. Let's stop checking it. It's going to be what it's going to be. Maybe it blows up my computer. Maybe it doesn't. Moving on. All right. So we have this obsession. We have a compulsion. We're trying to pull away on the compulsion as much as we can. Then we have to sit with the obsession. We have to sit with the feeling itself, which is uncomfortable, but we know it will eventually go away. All right. So I then asked this question. It's, how do we get stronger as people, physically stronger, right? Do we have to lift dumbbells? It helps. That's one way to do it. Do you have to lift barbells? Is that how you get stronger? Can you get stronger with those like cable machines, the ones that you have to like move and like connect a weight to it and like pull your arm up here and like, is that how you get better? Is it the weird machines, right? Is it yoga, right? Can you get stronger by just lifting big stinking rocks, right? You just find a big ass rock and you're like, I'm going to lift that in all these different ways. The answer is yes, you can get stronger in all those different ways. But the strength isn't connected to the item itself. It was connected to the weight that it had, right? A rock that's 20 pounds and a barbell that's 20 pounds, they are both 20 pounds. It's not that the rock is better than the barbell or the dumbbell or whatever it is. It's that it's still 20 pounds. If you lift it, it will make you stronger, right? So anyways, I hope this is making sense for some people. So we want to try to disconnect it from this content and view your exposures instead as what are the weights out there that are heavy for me, that make me feel uncomfortable, that are hard for me to lift. How do I go out there and lift those weights? Now, again, if we're starting with like the 5-pound weights and that feels uncomfortable, like the light weights, we lift those as much as we can over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then it's sooner or later, it doesn't become nothing. It becomes easier. And then we say, I'm going to switch to the 7.5, or I'm going to switch to the 10, and it's going to feel heavier because it is. And then you lift that one over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until that one becomes easier. It doesn't become nothing. It becomes easier. And then you keep moving up and up and up to wherever your goals are. Or until you're like me and you throw your back out and then you don't lift weights for another 6 months. But separate conversation. Point is as we're doing this, we want to start thinking more about where are those places that trigger that feeling that I have. Not how do I expose myself to, gay content? How to expose myself to really gross things that everyone thinks is gross or dangerous? It's what are those things for me that trigger feeling, and they can be small things, they can be little things, they can be anticipated things, they can be surprise things. But developing an orientation in your mind that as you're moving through this, that you start seeing things that create that sense of anxiety and you lean into that. You find the heavy thing and you go, this is heavy for me. I'm going to practice lifting this because I'm building my emotional strength to handle whatever comes my way in whatever shape it is, whatever size it is, I can handle it. Right? So it's more of a broader approach to viewing ERP treatment. Now, I bring all that up because a little bit of this will apply to Payton's question. So I'm going to stop yammering here, and I'm sure people will disagree with me, but I'm also curious to see if this shift in viewing obsessions and viewing the compulsion is helpful for people. So put it in the comments below, or put it on the comments on Instagram, or just email them to me and tell me I'm crazy, and that's also fine too. All right, let's play Payton's question, and then I'll get on to my answers.
Hi, Kevin. So I have not been officially diagnosed, but I am pretty sure from reading your super helpful articles online and listening to your podcast that I have sensory motor OCD and hyper awareness, and I am trying to help myself whilst in the process of finding a therapist that can help me professionally. And I know that part of healing it is accepting the problem if I understand the advice that I've gotten so far. And my issue is that my nose is constantly in my line of sight, and it makes me feel insane. And it's one of the most infuriating feelings I've ever felt before because I can't focus. I love to read. I want to be a lawyer, and I can't read. And it's just really irritating. And so instead of trying to pretend like it's not a real problem, I'm trying to accept it. And when I do see my nose in my line of sight, I am trying to accept it and try to soothe myself and the super irritated, angry feelings that come up when I see my nose in line of sight. But I was just wondering, it's kind of like a compulsion for me to Like if it happens to not be in my line of sight, then all of a sudden my brain is like, well, where'd it go? And it's kind of like a compulsion for me to look in a direction that would typically put my nose in my line of sight, and then there's the problem. And I know also you're supposed to like ignore or like try to resist compulsions. So my question is, sorry, I know that was super long. My question is could you give some advice in trying to heal sensory motor OCD and hyper awareness, and the difference between, like, how do I accept that it's happening and not try to shy away from the problem, but ignore the compulsions at the same time, if that makes sense? Is there kind of like a balance in between the two? Anyways, thank you so much for everything.
All right, Payton, thank you so much for sending that question in. So we haven't had a sensory motor question up here for a while. There was a period of time where it was like, that's all we had. So we need a little bit of a breather, but Payton, this question was a great reintroduction. So so I'm looking at my notes over here. So so it sounds like you were, obviously concerned. Like there's a lot of awareness that you have about the process, right? You're seeing a lot of similarities in writings and podcasts and other stuff out there. And you're going, this kind of sounds like me and what I'm struggling with, right? So I'm going to move forward with this as if you are indeed diagnosed with sensory motor hyperawareness OCD. And again, at the end of the day, it's just OCD. It's just a subtype that we give so that we all kind of know what we're talking about, right? But it'd be OCD. So I'm going to move forward as if that's what's happening, okay? So you're talking about how, you're well, first off, you're looking for a therapist, awesome. But like the problem is, like, as you're just living your life, you see the tip of your nose, right? This is one of those manifestations of sensory motor hyperawareness obsessions that, I don't really cite a lot. I know I talk about like breathing or blinking or heart rate, and those are just more of the common ones that I see. But the tip of the nose is absolutely one way that sensory motor and hyperawareness manifest. So you notice that it's as you're living your life, and particularly around the times that you're reading, you cited, that you get distracted by it, you get frustrated by the fact that you kind of see it, and it feels a little bit distracting, right? I want to get onto the compulsion that you cited, but one of the things we've talked about with obsessions, and what I was talking about at the top of the show, is thinking about, like, what is the core fear of this? What's the main problem? A lot of times with sensory motor, people will say, well, the problem is the thing that I'm noticing, right? The problem is the sound, or the problem is the blinking, or the problem is the sensation. You might say the problem is the tip of your nose, and it just keeps getting in the way. Now, that's one way to view it, but I think that's wrong. I think that's inaccurate, because the tip of your nose is just the tip of your nose. It's neither good nor bad. And the tip of your nose is not fighting with your reading. It's not, stopping your eyes from opening or stopping your ability to understand written language. It's that you're distracted, that you can see the tip of your nose and your brain hyperfocuses on it and has labeled it as a problem. And all your attention then goes to your nose, where it has arbitrarily labeled it as a problem and says, this is distracting, it's in the way, and we can't stop thinking about it and noticing it's just freaking there. Why is it starting to? And you don't like it, right? What we often see with sensory motor is that the problem mainly is in the frustration that you're going to get distracted, or the disappointment that you're not going to be able to focus on the thing that you want to focus on, or that because of that distraction that you're going to be missing something, or you're not going to feel the full awareness or joy or excitement or pleasures in life, right? Maybe for you, the worry is, boy, if you can't read, you can't get through law school, and that's really going to be a problem. And that's a scary thought. It's a scary thought with the idea, and this is where I'm going to say, like, yeah, these thoughts existentially can be scary. But then what are we thinking about as the problem? What are we labeling as the problem and the danger? And what are we labeling as the fix to the problem, right? Okay. So you're seeing the tip of your nose. What's funny is as you sent this, and as I was reading it, kind of considering it, I've noticed this, that my mustache has gotten to the point where I see it. Like, as I'm talking to you, if you can see me, like, I see my mustache here. So it's right here. So I see it, I feel it. So it's there. And sometimes, like right now, I'm talking about it, so I notice it. I've talked about my tinnitus or tinnitus, if you want to be that type of person. And I notice it. I hear it. I hear it all the time. It gets louder when I focus on it. My mustache becomes more pronounced when I notice it. But most of the time, my brain tends to ignore it. Your brain has gotten onto this pattern of noticing it, and your fight or flight system has been kicked up. So, what are some things we can do with this? So you talked about acceptance, right? So the question is, again, what are we accepting? Are you accepting that your nose is there? It is there. So is it a problem with accepting the nose? Or is it a problem with accepting the reality that you're getting distracted and that your brain is focusing on something that you don't really care to focus on? I would argue it's probably more in that vein. Now, of course, when you work with a therapist, work this out, see if that is maybe the core of it. There might be something else going on. But more often than not, it's the fact that we're distracted and we're having trouble accepting that we get distracted. And sometimes for some, it's trouble accepting the reality that you are a type of person who gets distracted by your nose. And there can be, as Stephen Phillipson talked about, a sense of entitlement that, like, we shouldn't be the person. Why am I the person who's getting distracted by my nose? I shouldn't be. I should be, I shouldn't have this problem. This is a problem for somebody else for some reason. But for me, I shouldn't. So there can be this battle of deservedness. I don't deserve this, so I'm angry at it. And that's what makes you focus on it. Now, I'm not saying exactly that one's you, but it could have an element to it. So what we're talking about, I think what the main work that needs to be done with sensory motor practicing is practicing the acceptance, but practicing the acceptance of a distraction. That for some reason your brain got squirreled and it was like, oh, what's that over there? Oh, it's that thing that I always see. What's that over there? Oh, it's that thing that I always see, right? So you're going to get distracted, and maybe you're not going to be able to be the person that just sits and reads for hours on end. I've never been that person. I can go like a half an hour and then my brain's like, we're done. We need to go do something else. We need to go find butterflies or something. And it sucks. Reading sucks for me from that perspective. And for other folks, and I wonder for you, it's you're not being able to read, or you're not able to read in the way that you've desired, maybe in the way that you used to read, but things have changed and that's hard and frustrating. So there is an acceptance then of the shift of where your life is now. And that, again, that can be hard to view your life as different, undesired as what you would like it to be, not what you expected it to be, and perhaps not what you believe it should be. So all of that is some emotional stuff that doesn't need to be looked at. And thinking about recognizing that there is a shift just for now. It doesn't mean for the rest of your life. I don't know if this is going to be the thing for the rest of your life, but it's the thing for now. And we all have things that we all have to deal with, right? So as I've said before, we all get a physical health thing, we all get a mental health thing, and the lucky ones of us get both. We don't get out of this life with nothing. So maybe this is the thing, and maybe this is the thing for right now, but there needs to be an acceptance that that's where it's at. It doesn't have to be your favorite, but you're in a phase right now where you're distracted by your nose. Okay. Your nose is the thing that's distracting you, and it's getting in the way of you reading. So we need to find ways around that and to be able to accept that you will get distracted, and then to resist the compulsion to get angry, to fight it, to shame yourself, to get mad at the universe or God, but instead to go, yep, I'm in that phase. I'm in that distraction phase. So let's get back to reading. And you get back to the line where you were. And then a couple words down or a couple lines down, your brain's going to go, what's that nose doing there? And then you're going to acknowledge it again, and then remember, oh yeah, I do that thing. And then you gently go back to reading. Over and over and over, you're going to practice this to the point where it's, yes, the distraction is there and you're catching yourself in getting frustrated and angry. That may mean having deep breaths, that may mean stretching, that may mean taking breaks from reading in order to bring down that sense of frustration. It's going to mean resisting ruminating about it, fantasizing about what life could be, what it should be, what it was, what it might be. means resisting the urge to get into that catastrophic mindset. My life is screwed. It'll never be good. I'll fail out of law school, right? So we don't know any of that stuff. All of that stuff is existential maybes. All we know is what's happening right now. And right now, you're distracted. Okay, so we're going to accept the distraction, right? You mentioned, and I want to get into just one other thing as well with that. One way to practice that, in addition to what I had previously mentioned. So you mentioned that, like if you're going throughout your day and like your nose is not in your line of sight, and then you go, your brain goes like, oh well, that's not okay. We need to find it again, and you like move your head in a way you can see it. Like I moved my head, I can now see it, right? So is that intentional, or is that kind of a knee-jerk reaction that you're not controlling, right? If it's intentional, you can notice that it's not there, and also then turn your attention towards the feeling that you have, not towards the question about what it means that your nose is or isn't there, and whether or not it's going to always be there, and whether or not you should or shouldn't be focused on it. Instead, just go, okay, what does this feel like? What is the urge feeling like? Where do I feel the urge sensation? Is it in my neck that I want to crane it to kind of see my nose? Is it my eyes want to try to go like, cross-eyed so I can kind of focus on it? Is it that I feel it in my stomach, the sense of like, I have to do this or else feeling, right? Take a second if you can in that moment. Don't do it while you're driving, but take a moment if you're able to, and just say, like, close your eyes and just focus on that feeling and take some gentle breaths with it. And just showing yourself that this feeling of uncertainty and discomfort, it's not dangerous. It's not going to be resolved by finding your nose. It'll get resolved temporarily, but it's not the fix to make it go away. You're making space for that feeling of discomfort and saying, yeah, this feeling's uncomfortable and I can survive this feeling. I can get through it. And that feeling will eventually pass. And sometimes you're going to give in and you're going to move your head and you're going to see your nose and your brain's going to go, oh, good, I see it again. And then you're going to go, heck, I see it again. And the cycle continues and the fight continues. So some other things you can do. Script how your life is going to be over and it's terrible and you'll never be able to read again and you're never going to enjoy things and you're just going to constantly live your life just looking at your nose like this, and you're just cross-eyed and you can't stop focusing on just that, and you lose relationships and friendships and jobs and all this stuff because you just can't stop looking at your nose. Maybe that's going to be your script. You can one thing that I was thinking about is, if we're practicing the idea of distraction, we can also practice distraction in other areas of our life. And one way to do this is you can download something called the Yap app. If you have an iPhone, you can do the Yap app. If not, find a random reminder generator, okay? So what this does is that you can put parameters in of like which hours you would like the random reminders, and then you put what random reminder. For this, you just go like nose or distraction. And then what it will do is, and you put in how many times you want to be distracted. I bet there are other parameters too. Point is that you then put that on your phone and then you go throughout your day. And then it will send you a text message, or it looks like a text message with your reminder on it. And it will buzz or it will ding, and you can do both for this exercise. But you can say, all right, between noon and 12:30, I'm going to have 10 or 12 or the maximum amount of reminders that you can have for that. And then you are going to put that in your pocket and it's going to ding and it's going to buzz, and you are instead going to watch TV, or you're going to read a book or a magazine or just something chill. And then those reminders are going to go off, and you're going to know, and it's going to pull your attention away from the thing that you're doing. That's the point. You're going to get distracted, and then you're going to acknowledge it and gently shift back to the thing. You're not going to rewind. You're not going to backtrack in what you read. You're just going to pick up from the best place that you left off. And maybe you missed something. Maybe you're never going to get that information, and that's going to be why you will fail out of law school, or that's why you're never going to really and fully appreciate the 30 Rock as a show. I don't know. But you're going to get distracted. And then we acknowledge it. We acknowledge that feeling that we get, and then we just gently shift back. And what we're getting good at is tolerating distraction and allowing for redirection without answering the question about what your future is going to look like, what this means for you, whether or not it's ever going to go away, whether or not you're going to be happy or unhappy for the rest of your life. You're going to simply practice acknowledging and redirecting. All right. So those are just some ideas that I had. I hope this has been helpful for you. I really appreciate you taking the time to send out this message. Hopefully this has been helpful for other people listening. I'm sure I missed out on 100 other exposures or exercises that I can do, and I didn't even talk about cognitive restructuring or anything like that. But you know what? There's only so much podcast one can have. So I hope this has been helpful, Payton. Again, thank you so much for sending it. If you have a question about this, if someone else out there has a question about this or wants to add something, send me a message and I'll be more than happy to put this up. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.